Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, the show where we talk about today's news, views, opinions, and trends from an admittedly conservative perspective. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and this evening I actually have two guests that are running for office in the East and South Bay. Vanila Sing, who's running for U.S. House, and Jaime Patino, who's running for State Assembly. Welcome, folks.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So wanted to get to know a little bit about each of you and what kind of situation led you to a point where you got crazy enough that you decided to run for office. And we'll start with Vanila. Tell us a little bit about what made you decide to run.
Well, thanks so much for asking, and it's a pleasure to be here with Jaime. I'm a physician at Stanford. I've been there for 10 years, and what got me to run was really the stories that I'd been hearing from my patients. Now, we know that there's new healthcare reform legislation that's out there. But even prior to that, you hear the stories of patients' treatments that get refuted. And as a doctor, it's been very difficult to see that. I treat some of the most vulnerable patients at Stanford who come in with all kinds of different issues and all backgrounds of the socioeconomic square. And in essence, what I found was that the legislation, which has already proven to have many problems, would continue to have problems, and that there haven't been enough doctor voices involved in there to really represent the patients. Basically, when it comes down to it, what we realize is that the legislators have come up with different protocols and different rules that they feel will help improve access to care, but ultimately they don't know the impact that that really makes on patients themselves. And I feel that as a doctor, I could best advocate on their behalf. So that's one of my main reasons that I'm running. The other issues are really related to my story, my own personal story. I'm a proud daughter of immigrants. My parents came here from India about 42 years ago. And my father came here on a scholarship to do his master's in civil engineering. Today, I can say my dad just completed the San Francisco Bay Bridge project, and that's been a dream to work on a landmark project like that. I've been the beneficiary of all his hard work, my mom's hard work, and I've lived the American dream. My concern is that our kids and our future generations may not have those opportunities. And I feel that we are off on the wrong track. We need some fiscal responsibility. We need more American jobs. And we need to ensure that those kids, even with all the upbringing and values and education that they'll get, that they will have those opportunities that I benefited from and so many others have.
Okay. And so how about you, Jaime?
Yeah, well, Chris, thanks for having us here today. I'm a single father. I have an 8-year-old daughter. I live in Union City. I've been a lifelong resident. I also I work finance for UC Berkeley. I've been there for about 3 years, and I'm also the chair of the Human Relations Commission for Union City. Most of my work has been in the private sector, though. And the reason why I decided to run was because I see what's going on in this state, and there's some problems that are here. We're not addressing them. We need to speak now before we get to the point where we have to make some really big, drastic changes in the quality of our life, make some big choices on how we're going to spend our money at the state level. My three things I'm going to be fighting for that I'm mostly concerned about are jobs, schools, and law and crime. The first thing is jobs. Right here in the Bay Area, overall things are getting better, but the state as a whole is still far behind the rest of the country. Right now, we're second in the highest unemployment rate in the country. If you actually look at the U6 unemployment rate, which just came out a couple weeks ago, and that rate actually doesn't just deal with the regular, typical unemployed. They deal with the underemployed or people that just gave up. It's been consistently above 13%. Mm-hmm. So we need to get to these people. We need to help them out. And we also need to make sure that we don't have jobs that are here move to other states. We don't need our jobs going to Texas. We don't need our jobs going to Nevada, to Arizona. I happened to work for a company a while back. It got so frustrating for them to operate here in California, they moved over to Kentucky. 59 good jobs were lost because of that. We cannot have that. When Google expands, they shouldn't expand in Texas. They should expand here in California, where they're headquartered. Chevron, just a few months ago, said that they were going to move 700 jobs from here in San Ramon, their world headquarters, over to Houston. That needs to stop. We need to change the environment in Sacramento to make it more business friendly. Our school systems are failing us. We're getting kids through our system here without an adequate education. They do not have the skills they need to be effective in this workforce. We're doing things the old way, and we're not teaching our kids how to be productive in a 21st century economy. Now, does it mean spending more money? Maybe on certain programs, but overall it doesn't. I was reading an article not too long ago where 8th grade algebra scores actually increased in 2009 in this state, right around the time when education funding was starting to get slashed because of the recession. Now, that goes contrary to what we're hearing everywhere else. That, oh, you need more money, you need more money. I was just visiting a school, a charter school called Impact Academy over in Hayward. Their kids are 92% minority. 65% of those kids are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Yet when they graduate, 95% of these students go on to a college, whether it's a technical school, vocational school, 2-year college. 75% of them actually go to a 4-year college, and yet they do it with less money per pupil. So, we need to look into, are we spending our money efficiently and get the most out of this? Because we're getting kids that are graduating, don't know how to fill out a resume, don't know what it's like to actually be in the workforce. They think it's an actual democracy when it's not.
Don't know how to run a cash register. That's what I hear as far as complaints from the citizens and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so you're working in Berkeley. Do you work for Berkeley?
For UC Berkeley,
yes. So I just want you guys to know there are all sorts of reasons that I feel like you're busting all of the stereotypes down. Stanford, UC Berkeley. We have Democrats on the show. We have Republicans on the show. You both happen to be Republicans, running as Republicans in the Bay Area. Now, the media would have us believe that both of you and me, we all have too much pigment to run as Republicans in the first place, especially within liberal university settings. I mean, I'm just looking at this. You're female, which we're supposed to hate all females in the Republican Party. You're a single dad. I'm looking at all of these different factors, and I'm just watching the stereotypes. I can hear them crashing in my head. How much opposition have you heard to being Republican and breaking the stereotypes down? I'm just curious.
Well, I can speak to that immediately. I think the first thing that I heard when we had filed our papers was, is she a real Republican? There's no way that she could be a Republican.
Did you give the blood test?
Yeah.
They have them at the registrar, right?
I think the beauty of that is that what the media has painted Republicans as, and then what reality shows, is what they have a hard time putting together. And so, there are many people out there who are like us. And what I said to them was, get ready, because I'm just the beginning.
Yes.
We certainly vote and we consider and we think about issues outside of our race or gender or skin color.
Right.
And I think that's what's coming to light. And as we see the direction that the country's headed in with the taxation and the spending, I think most people who are here in this country, who have come from all walks of life, from different corners of the globe, to really get the American dream and have the opportunities that allowed our country to prosper, they're saying, wait a minute, this isn't why we're here. This isn't fitting the bill. If I wanted high taxes and high spending and a government that was overreaching and crushing us, well, I would have just stayed home.
Or moved to Europe. I mean, that's popular there, right?
Right, precisely. And I think that's exactly what's motivating all of us, and that's why the Republican Party is taking on so many different flavors, because people see it for what it is, and those ideals which are so worth fighting for, which is an individual freedom and liberty.
Right. And so what about you, Jaime?
Yeah, well, right now we're collecting signatures in lieu of the filing fee. We're trying to get 1,500 right now. We're out everywhere, all over the district.
Right.
And one thing I've noticed time and time again, if someone gives me 10 seconds to explain what my priorities are, what I believe in, 9 times out of 10, they agree with me.
I found the same thing. When you talk as humans, they believe it doesn't matter, and they're just assuming you guys are Democrats anyway, like they did to me.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want good jobs here?
Right.
I spoke with some people. They had grandkids that had to their grandkids moved to Texas because their jobs moved. Now they don't get to see their grandkids that often anymore. You know, who doesn't know someone that's actually they had to leave the state in order to keep their job? Yeah. You know, it's very frustrating. Most people care about good jobs, good schools. They don't mind paying the money for good schools, but they want to see some results.
Well, in fact, you know, the McKee Road here near San Jose, they're the 6th generation family here that has been a mantle to the Bay Area, and they're leaving. And they love this area, and they're leaving because of the cost of living issues and what they see as a shrinking opportunity in Silicon Valley. So despite the Silicon Valley success that we see, the tech companies, and really the upper tech companies have had, the people that service the Silicon Valley tech industry are feeling a very different economy that hasn't really sprung into action after such a deep recession. It's really been sputtering. And I think that's what we really want to bring attention to, is that we need improved circumstances that allow our economy to prosper, which is small businesses feeling hope, feeling like they can take a risk or stay open with less regulation, lower taxes. That's the engine of America.
Well, even some of the bigger businesses are moving out of the Bay Area because they can't afford to do business here. We keep talking about Texas. Even my son is, he's 13 years old, and he says, "Dad, can we move to Texas? Because you get to do things like drive the car you want over there, or you get to go do all of these other things that are not just necessarily economic." But as a teenage kid, it's like he's looking at car magazines and all the things he wants to put on them. It's like, that's not legal in California. That's not legal in California.
That's right.
It's just all of these things, and it's not that we want to damage the state in any way. We just want some of that freedom that used to be here. But businesses like Carl's Jr. pulling out, going to Texas, because there it takes 6 weeks to open. Here it takes 6 months to 2 years. Yeah. And we're seeing it time after time.
And just getting things done is difficult here in California. I mean, imagine if you bought and sold cars, having to deal with, be at the DMV all day when you should be tending to your business.
Right.
That's what gets a lot of people is we're spending a lot of money on this bureaucracy and we're not getting results.
Right.
We're not getting the state that we should be getting for the amount of money we're spending on it.
Well, the healthcare issue again is the latest, greatest example of the government overreach. Of course, this is at a federal level, but the CBO, which is a nonpartisan agency, just reported that they're expecting about 2 million jobs that will be lost because of it. And that just came out today. And I think that ultimately we have to go back to the tried and true things that we know that allow jobs to prosper, for companies to be able to create those jobs. And when we see government overreaching, not getting out of the way, we see that it's the people who pay the price.
Well, and even within the legislation that's passing at the state level or at the federal level, you see scenarios where the legislation is often so vague and left up to bureaucrats who are not accountable to fill in the blanks. So the healthcare bill itself was 2,800 pages, and now it's probably 70,000 pages because of what's coming out of the Department of Health and Human Services. And the input from the people who are actually doing the job, delivering the services on a daily basis, like the doctors in healthcare, are left out of the whole structuring process.
Right. Very minimal input.
Right.
Very concerning, actually. In fact, most patients think that the doctors were involved in it, and now they're getting to learn that we had very little to do with it. And it's alarming, actually, because the entire industry is built between the patient and the doctor. Just those two, that relationship. And then you have an industry of insurance companies, of hospitals. Everybody's involved in it, the unions, but you don't have the doctor and the patient involved. And that's what's lacking. And that's where the problem lies. So we need more doctors in Congress who represent those patients, where we know those treatments that are vital and necessary, that they are followed through, and that it's the doctors who make the decisions along with the patients.
Yeah, let's get another thing clear too, is that for all the hoopla about the numbers of people enrolling into the Affordable Care Act, many of them are people that already had policies. We're not signing up. A lot of them are not people that didn't have coverage. These are people whose plans were canceled, are no longer being renewed, that are getting on now. It's not necessarily the people that the law was supposed to be helping, the uninsured.
Right.
So we're getting more laws, more regulations, more cost,
right.
and we're not really helping the people that it was designed to help.
Plus,
well, that's assuming that it was designed to help people versus to reorganize the system.
Right, exactly. It's higher premiums, higher deductibles. The people who are signing up, in fact, many of them are now in Medi-Cal, which is, our form of Medicaid, here in California, and that's not necessarily a good thing because there's so many problems with that as well. So
and they also decline a lot of coverage or a lot of procedures for patients, more so than the private sector in many cases.
Absolutely.
And people think that the government can do it better. Well,
yeah.
No, we know otherwise.
And many providers won't even take Medi-Cal or Medicaid. Yeah. That's the thing. So you're going to get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people here in California onto Medi-Cal, and so you're expanding the pool, but the amount of providers that actually take it is going to be so limited, you will have insurance in name only.
And you will have a doctor shortage because you're simply not going to have the providers to do that, as well as for Medicare, which we know the ACA legislation took $700 billion out of Medicare.
Yep.
And that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
So what we're seeing basically is, what they were saying, we got to pass the bill to see what's in it. Well, we see what's in it, and what's in it isn't very good.
I read a chunk of it before. Well, that's kind of what prompted me to run for office when I was in your admirable shoes. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that makes you crazy. When you actually see what's being done to people as opposed to what's being told is being done for people, it's enough to make you either lose your mind or, well, you have to lose your mind to run for something at the level that you guys are running for anyway, but I commend you for doing that.
Well, what I can tell you is what I would take to Washington is what we do in our industry. I may disagree with the doctor, in the operating room, but when we have a patient on the table, we have to come to a solution for that patient in the interest of that patient. Mm-hmm. It's the same principles, the same guidance. When we're in Washington, D.C., we need to come to solutions in the interest of the people. And it is amazing to me that our government officials, our representatives, don't have that. That should be their guiding principle.
Well, they are in it for the people that pay them to be in it for them in many cases. Right,
or their agendas, which is why they may spend for programs that may not necessarily be in the best interest of our entire government, but do promote their own agendas.
Right.
We need to bring them back to what is the purpose, why civic service.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's why we're running too, is because we're tired of seeing unresponsive politicians. Mm-hmm. We recently had 2 BART strikes here, 2 BART strikes, and our whole Bay Area delegation was quiet. It was shocking how quiet they were. We had people taking hours to get to work, waiting in line for buses that never came, or buses that were too packed to let them on. And where was our Bay Area delegation? Missing in action. There was a poll that came out back in December, I believe, or early or November, where 60% of the Bay Area respondents said that they were in favor of banning BART strikes. Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything from Sacramento? No. Do they work for? Do those representatives work for the people, or do they work for the special interests? They're going to give them the money and the foot power to get reelected. And that's what really incensed me, was that they didn't even come out and speak for the people. They're supposed to be looking out for the real little guy, the person that just needs to get to their work, to their job, drop off their kid at daycare, pick up their kid from daycare. Right. I was stuck in that mess. I had to go to Berkeley.
Right.
And I didn't like it, but at least I didn't have to go over the Bay Bridge.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you tick off Chris Christie? Is that why the Bay Area was shut down? No. So what would you guys do differently? I mean, if we were the kings and queens of California and the country, I mean, and I don't advocate royalty or royalty worship by any means, but I mean, what would you guys do if it were up to you? If you were to get into office, how would you change things? We hear all of this, you need to cooperate with the other side. Is cooperation always a good thing?
Well, I think in this environment, especially at the state level, you'd have to. If you want to be an effective leader in the Bay Area, you have to work in a bipartisan manner, because many of the elected officials at the city level, the county level, they're from the other side. I'm hoping that we do very well in our state elections for Assembly, Senate, but chances are even that we probably still will not have a majority in either house, either chamber. I believe we will deny them their 2/3 majority, which would be great. But either way, we're still going to have to work together. Mm-hmm. And it's not my way or the highway. It shouldn't be like that on every case. Some things we do need to dig in our heels and say, out of principle, we're not going to budge on this. But for others, we could find some common ground. I think by the end of the day, a lot of people like AB 109. With early release of a lot of the prisoners, we could see. I think a lot of us agree that was not done very effectively. That was not done well. You released all these prisoners, but you didn't give the counties or the cities the resources to deal with the influx of felons. Mm-hmm. So here we have these people just like a revolving door going into the county jails, only stay a few days, then they're back out. Mm-hmm. The cities are overwhelmed because the property crimes are going up. Mm-hmm. A lot of drug crimes are going up, but they have not much money for treatment, for supervision. Mm-hmm. I was hearing from the assistant DA for Sacramento County. She said, we have 95,000 sex offenders in this state, and out of that, we lost track of about 35,000 of them.
And that's scary, scary stuff. Yeah. We've only got a couple minutes left. I do want to find out from Vanila, what would you change, or do you agree that we should always go along to get along? Or are there times to dig in your heels? What's your thought?
I think both are important, but I think what it really comes down to is what the voters send us there for, and that's to get things done. Ultimately, when it's a privilege, right? It's an honor to go there and to represent those folks in the district. I do believe that we need to put aside partisan politics. There's game playing that actually surprises me. I think in the real world, we all learn to come to conclusions and solutions. Part of that is having dialogue and having an understanding of what the other side is going for. But it's also being mature in our approach to what we're doing. What is our duty? What are we there for? Mm-hmm. And ultimately, I think we have to put the people's interests first. We have to be able to prioritize what's most important. Right now, it's clear that our national debt is of grave importance. We need some fiscal responsibility. We can look at programs. There are 162 redundant programs as per the GAO report. There are places to start that both sides can agree on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way to do it. And know that maybe less suspicion about what the other person is doing there and more time finding commonality. Because ultimately, I think most people do want the best for the country. Okay. But economy, jobs, and healthcare, those are the three things that I think we need to focus on currently.
Okay, well, if you both will hold on for just a moment, we're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to bring you back after the break so that we can let people know where to find out more about what you're up to in your campaigns. So if you'll hold on for just a moment, we'll be right back after a word from our underwriters, the Conservative Forum.
The Conservative Forum of Silicon Valley began with 20 conservatives meeting at a restaurant in November of 2003. Our mission is to promote the principles of American liberty through education. By 2012, we had grown to over 600 paid members. Our monthly meetings feature well-known and prestigious conservative speakers addressing issues that are critical to our country's very survival. This includes speakers like Victor Davis Hanson, Andrew Breitbart, David Horowitz, and many others. In addition to our monthly meetings, we sponsor a conservative local cable access TV show, The Right Side, covering today's topics. Our Constitution discussion group not only teaches the Constitution, but started our annual essay contest that awards 2 $1,000 scholarships to local high school seniors. We are a virtual clearinghouse for grassroots organizations by providing them with table space at no charge in our exhibit area. There are typically a dozen groups represented. If you are like-minded, join us at our next meeting and become motivated and empowered. Liberty, made in America.
And welcome back to the right side. That was a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum. And as I like to say always, thank you, Conservative Forum, for underwriting us. But the reality is, we're not really what they're best known for. What they are best known for is their speaker series. So, for example, tonight, Victor Davis Hanson is speaking at 432 Sterling Road at the IFES Portuguese Hall, just 3 minutes from here in Mountain View. That normally occurs on the first Tuesday of each month, with the exceptions of July, and that will be shifting in November, so early heads up on that one. But in March, Greg Lukianoff, the president for the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education, will be speaking. In April, Dr. Bert Folsom, a Hillsdale professor and well-known author. And then May 6th, Joe Arpaio, Sheriff Joe from Maricopa County, will be joining us. I'm sure the topic of border control, as well as his treatment of prisoners as prisoners, will be discussed. So join us for that, for sure. But in closing, I wanted to give you guys just a minute more each to kind of talk about, just to reiterate your top three and to tell us about where we can go for more information about your campaign, your background, and to figure out where to send those nasty gram emails about how you should be paying attention to our needs. We'll start with Jaime.
Yes, like I said, my three main priorities are going to be jobs, fixing our school system, and also keeping our neighborhood safe. We got to amend AB 109. We got to amend it. Every mayor and city council person I've talked to in my district says they need help. We're going to send it to them if I get elected. Okay. You can find out more about my campaign at www.patinofor20thassembly.com.
Okay, great. And spell Patino for people?
Patino.
And they don't have to put a tilde over it to get to you?
No, they don't.
Okay, great. And so, Vanila?
Well, I'm Vanila Sing. I'm running for Congress in the 17th District. I'm running on health care, American jobs, and fiscal responsibility. I'm raised in this district. I was fortunate to go to Fremont Public Schools. I'm a part of the people. I'm a product of the people, and I believe I'm the better for it. And I hope to represent them well on the values that we've all been raised on. I will tell them that having a doctor in Congress, I will certainly represent their needs, both from the patient's perspective, but also from the people's perspective.
Okay.
And
the website is?
www.vanilasing.com. And that's Vanila with one L and sing like sing a song.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for joining us, and thank you for joining us this evening. I like them both, but they are politicians, so check those websites and make sure that the same things are said there as that we're here. But reach out to them, learn more about them, and join us again sometime in the near future on The Right Side. I've been your host, Chris Pareja. Thanks for joining us.